Hi guys, this is Ignorance is Bliss. I'm Hodan.
I'm Farah.
I'm Lisa.
And today we're talking about expats. So guys, what do we think about the term expat?
We are talking about expats. We're talking about the term expat and the words we use to describe different people like immigrants, migrant workers, that kind of thing. So Farah, what do you think of the word expat?
So firstly, I think we should start off with the terms. So expatriate is someone who lives in a different country. Different country.
Okay.
Expatriate is someone who lives in a different country.
Yeah.
Immigrant is someone who lives in a different country permanently.
Yeah.
And then a migrant is someone who chooses to live in a different place or country.
Yeah.
So these terms are quite
closely related.
Yeah, closely related, but there's subtle differences between expat and migrant.
Yeah.
So I think with expat, it's a really interesting term because it's reserved for a selective group of people. So if you think about the connotations and assumptions linked to expat, you automatically think of a nationality, an ethnicity, maybe someone of a certain social class, a certain language.
So the term expat, it has actually changed meaning over the years. The original meaning of the term expatriate, now shortened to expat, was given to British civil servants that were sent to work overseas. So there was no element of choice. And that's why I say the meaning has changed, because now when you think of the word expat, is somebody that has chosen to live abroad to work.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't know that. I genuinely didn't know that the term was like people who were sent over to work somewhere. That's really interesting.
British people in particular.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas now it's anyone that chooses to live in a separate country, different country.
I've never heard the word expat in the UK.
Yeah.
I've never ever referred to people coming into the country as expats. I don't think we use that word as commonplace. I knew I was going to be an expat when I was moving to Dubai, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
It's just the language.
Because I guess in the UK everyone calls anyone who's not born and bred in the UK an immigrant or migrant.
Yeah, we call them, we call immigrants are the ones that have come over, like somebody fleeing war or fleeing conflict. Like we call them immigrants, but people coming over from the EU to work, we call them migrant work. We call them economic migrants, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between a migrant and a immigrant?
So immigrant is like more permanent settlement. They're moving. We think of it as they're moving to kind of have a better life. Yeah. Right. Because wherever they've come from is a bad place, so they're leaving there to come and have a better life. And migrant doesn't have the same connotations of struggle as the word immigrant.
I also think the word immigrant has been highly politicised by the media, and I think that's why when we use the word immigrant it's got much more negative connotations, I feel, whereas migrant, we don't really hear that term. It's not a supercharged term.
Immigrant is a loaded term, isn't it? And like I've told kids off for using the word immigrant to insult another child before, because they know that calling someone an immigrant is a diss. Just
for a bit of context, we're all teachers, which is why Lisa brought up
exactly.
kids off.
And this was in the UK that I told this kid off, this person was actually, like, I'm pretty sure they are the child of immigrants. They're probably born in the UK, but they didn't recognise that somebody had just come over. They didn't recognise that, okay, maybe you've got this in your family history as well. So they're almost detached, but they've been socialised to think that the word immigrant is a diss, and that's not on.
And then I guess with expat is the complete opposite, because there's positive connotations to it. It's also a loaded term, but there's a different set of, I guess, meanings, a completely different meaning behind the term expat.
I mean, do you guys consider yourselves expats?
By definition, yes, we're expats by definition, but I don't call myself an expat. If anyone asks me, I just say I'm an economic migrant. I don't, and I also don't call people expats. Again, over here, and like you said earlier, we never heard the term. We never heard the term expat in Britain, but over here you hear it on a weekly basis. So and so is an expat, or this is exclusively for expats, expat community, etc.
Exactly.
So I don't call myself an expat, and I don't call people expats.
I'm the same as you in the sense that I don't identify as an expat, even though obviously I'm an expat because I'm living and working outside of my home country, but expat is very exclusive.
Yeah.
And when we use the term expat, a lot of the time we're excluding people from there, from like the expat life image that we have. So, for example, if we think of construction workers or people that work in hospitality, people with a different passport, not native English speakers, not Westerners, we don't call them expats. Yeah. We call them immigrants, we call them migrant workers, which is why I don't identify as an expat. I am an economic migrant because that is why I am here. I've moved here purely for financial reasons and other reasons, but that is the main reason why I'm here.
But it's even like in the UK, right? So if a Pakistani goes over to the UK, they're an immigrant. But if a British person goes over to Pakistan, regardless of the job, you're automatically an expat.
Yeah.
So it's an Anglo-centric term, right? Because it's centered around Britain.
Yeah.
And it's also ethnocentric because one culture is now more superior to other cultures. So that's why I have issues with that term.
And should we make it wider? Is it just British or Western passports in general? So people from the US, Australia, New Zealand?
Yeah, absolutely.
Native English speakers.
Yeah.
From Europe.
Yeah.
Makes me think of Italians are expats here. Italians or so it's not just native English speakers, but native English speakers. That means that people like Australians and South Africans, they're included in the term.
Right. So that would be So, but then Italians don't speak English, but I guess that's
they're European. They're from the West.
Right. So we're saying the West or people who and/or speak English.
I wouldn't consider Italians expats. In Britain, Italians, Polish people, anyone from Europe is considered, like you said, an economic migrant. I honestly, I feel like it's an Anglo-centric term. It's
so
literally centered.
Even here?
I think over here it's slightly different because anyone who can speak fluent English or English is their native language, you're an expat.
So what would you consider Italians here, for instance? I hate to single out one particular, but just for example, Italians here, expats are no for you.
I think because of their ethnicity, and because of maybe they can speak fluent English, then yes, they would be an expat. But I think in Britain, they would not be considered an expat. Expats in Britain are like your Americans, Australians, South Africans. It's a very exclusive group.
Really, even in Britain. See,
like you wouldn't call a Polish person. Would you call a Polish person an expat?
No. We call Polish people economic migrants.
But would we call? So who would we call expats in the UK? What are you saying? Who would we call?
Americans.
I think Farah's right about her definition. I think that what you're saying about the term expat in the UK is absolutely right. Yeah. But I think here it is European.
A bit more wider. I think you're probably right there as well. To be fair, it's anyone who can speak English.
So is it just ethnicity? It also, I feel, stretches to profession as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if somebody, like we're all teachers, for instance, I think we'd easily be considered expats.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same for someone who, I know it's not the same for someone who works as a domestic worker, in construction. Definitely not. No one's calling them expats.
But if they were English, would they be considered an expat?
Yes, they would.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just there's a number of different things, right? It's not just profession.
Yeah.
It has to be nationality, your ethnicity, and then potentially your profession, your social status.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So it's quite also interlinks. Also interlinks.
I've got to be honest, I didn't really, coming out here, I considered myself an expat, and I think with talking to you guys, we've talked about a lot of interesting things, and I think the word expat's one of them, and I definitely am more, I'm disassociating, in the sense that I don't necessarily want to be called it, and I don't necessarily want to use it with anyone else. I think economic migrant, I think, is a much better, it's factual. It's what it says on the tin. And
you're not when you use the term economic migrant, you're not excluding that you're saying anybody that is moved, which is most people in the UAE. 90% of the people in the UAE are here for work. So that's including everybody that's doing the same thing you're doing, which is working abroad. Whereas expat, we know that's excluding loads of people. And also it's this thing of how hard are you working? With expat, the term expat equals nice lifestyle in our minds.
Sand.
Exactly. And so that's why I think it does exclude other people, because with other people who work harder, as in manual labour or work longer hours, we don't necessarily think of them as expats over here.
Yeah, so you're saying if you look at the semantics of the term, expat equals privilege, it equals certain nationality, exclusive group,
migrant things about class and privilege, education definitely. Whereas I guess economic migrant is a different set of umbrella term. It's just people who come over. It literally is what expat should be. The definition expat should be, I think. But I don't think many expats would consider themselves economic migrants. I think they prefer to say I'm an expat. That's from my experience, right? Yeah, absolutely.
And it differentiates them from the other economic migrants that are here. I'm an expat because I'm in this group. I just think it's important to talk about words, really. We talked about that, didn't we? So words are important. How do we use them? Do we know what the background is? Are we using them responsibly? Are we using them in a way that inspires the right kind of behaviour? Because I think the problem is, if we are exclusivist with the term expat, then how do we treat people who we consider to not be? I don't mean us, but you know what I mean. In general, I think that's why it's important to think about the words that you're using. I don't think many people talk about the word expat, to be honest. But it's a word that needs to be not investigated, because that's too far, but it needs to be looked at. For sure. We need to check how we use it. If we're using the word expat to talk about all people that are outside of their home country working, fine. But if you're only using the word expat to refer to Westerners, native English speakers, Europeans that are also here working, then you're being exclusive in the way that you're using it, and that's not okay. That's problematic in my opinion.
It's problematic to use different terms for a group of foreigners, isn't it? That's problematic in itself, isn't it?
That's when we start. That's when things get a bit, I think, muddy there. If we start using different words for different ethnic groups or different classes
or different groups of foreigners in general.
Groups of foreigners, I think that's a problem. For sure. And also that makes me think, if I didn't have a Western passport, then I would not be considered an expat.
You wouldn't.
Or by profession. So if I came over as a domestic worker, which is obviously a job, and these people work incredibly hard.
I've just thought of a question.
Go on.
So obviously out here we've got schools, different curriculum, like Indian curriculum school, Filipino curriculum schools. So Indian curriculum schools, Indian teachers, obviously from India with Indian accents. So are they expats?
No. South Asians are not considered expats. Like I said earlier, with the example of the Pakistani going to Britain, immigrant.
Even though they are teachers, because we did speak about profession.
No, but I said it's interlinked. I think it's a range of things.
Does it fulfil other criteria that I don't think people would still?
And
also, unless they revealed themselves as a teacher, because then they might think, I think that might give them a bit of a pause, to think.
I just think
if you didn't know that, they would just be.
I just feel like you're an immigrant of not even an immigrant, sorry, because they're not here permanently. Let's say you're an economic migrant of a certain social status. So you might be a wealthy migrant, or you might be an educated migrant, but you're still a migrant. You're not considered an expat because you are not part of this exclusive club. You do not have the privilege. Migrant, immigrant, expat, all loaded terms. You have to look at the semantics of each term. All have their own set of...
Okay, someone calls you an expat. How do you respond?
I'm not offended. If someone calls me an expat, I'm not offended. I think it's silly if you're offended, because by definition we're expats. I wouldn't have an issue with it. I've had conversations in the past with work colleagues and friends over here where I've said to them, I don't consider myself an expat. This is how the conversation started, right? We were having a conversation about holding you when you said you're an expat, and then this is how the conversation started. So I have had conversations with people in the past about calling myself an economic migrant, and then they would also refer to themselves as an economic migrant, or they would say they're an expat and they would explain why. I didn't have a problem with people calling themselves an expat. I just think you need to be, like you said, you need to be a little bit careful if you're calling a certain group of foreigners a certain term and another group of foreigners a different term. I think that's when it gets a bit tricky. So
check your, like Lisa said, check your use of it.
As
opposed to trying to, kind of make people feel bad for using it. We're not saying that, are we?
No.
We're just saying check your use of it.
And
just be aware
of
how and just use it. Observe how people refer to people working out here that are not native English speakers, not from the West, not European. Observe how people talk about them in conversation. Do they call them expats? Or do they use some of these other terms? And if they're not calling them an expat, maybe be like, oh, that's interesting. You called that person an immigrant.
But you consider yourself an expat.
Yeah, I wonder why you did. That's interesting.
So opening up conversation.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to start the conversation.
Yeah. That's interesting. So that way you're inviting people. It's not judgmental, isn't it? You're just saying, you know, why do you think this person qualifies and this person doesn't? And I think that might actually make people realise, oh, hang on, because I don't think a lot of people want to use it in discriminatory ways. Or,
it's just, I think it's just something that highlights our unconscious bias.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why I think it's an important thing to discuss and talk about.
Yeah. Guys, let us know in the comments what you think about the term expat, immigrant, and migrant.
And how you identify as well, if you're living abroad.